It is the Stochastic fiction game. This is a 2-hour writing game starting right now, where I'll write a story according to the stochastic fiction outline within the time limit, which is 2 hours, and read whatever is written at the end. Hopefully a story that is worth the time to read. I will rate that story as well. But before I can do any of that, I have to actually create the outline randomly, maybe stochastically, because it's based upon things that are in my head. We've generated the outline using Git as a tool to be able to find a new file in the file system. We have this file right here. I'm going to copy the file. I'm going to paste the file. I'm going to open the file, and inside the file we have these story elements for today's stochastic fiction game. The story elements are setting time past, setting main location plane, conflict person versus nature, quantity of primary characters mini, point of view third, tense past tense, genre fantasy, format flash fiction. Those are the story elements for today. Let's try to write to them. I'm going to go from top to bottom and try to reason how to make a story for this. Well, the past is any time before now, so I can't think of any future tech. The setting main location is in a plane. Okay. I'll think of something on that. Then person versus nature. Well, gravity, wind, tornado, something like that. Many primary characters. Point of view is going to be third. Present tense. I usually write in present tense, so that might be a little bit easy. Genre fantasy. That's so broad. In that, it could be fantasy adventure, fantasy romance, or fantasy. Let's go fantasy. I don't know how that's going to work out because the genre is fantasy. On a plane versus nature in the past with many characters in a flash fiction story. So flash fiction story for me, I like to fall between about 600 to 1,000 words, depending on genre. If I get 400 a day or 500 solid good words for a flash fiction story, I'll feel like I had some sort of success for this day. Else, it may be a failure. For the story elements, past, plane, nature, plane. I mean, I always feel like I've recently wrote one of these stories about a plane. When you play this type of game often, it's going to happen. It's the fantasy part that I got to figure out. The person versus nature, you're in a plane. I mean, that's where I'm a bit lost, maybe. Maybe not lost, but where I need some focus. Like, I'd maybe rather it be like a plane for PLAIN and not one that flies through the air. I'm fantasy. Person versus nature is the hardest. Like person versus person. Person versus nature. So I almost need to be like a solo plane flyer. Maybe like I'm not like aviation's not like a hobby of mine, nor is it a deep interest. So it's not like I read a lot of books or watch a lot of things about planes and advancements and various configurations throughout the timeline we live in right now. So having a little bit of a thought that if I had this person flying, that I wouldn't be able to have it be like a dogfight, because that would, be like some action sequence, some fantasy action sequence that I couldn't accurately describe with the proper words that one would want to use if you were, writing a story about flying. I'm sure there's a lot of details about a plane and specific mechanics of a plane that I just don't know, because I don't. So with that in mind, we're going to kind of go beyond, and we'll just think of like things that are popping into my mind right now for this story is making it like some historical fantasy fiction with the Wright brothers. Maybe they get caught in a time warp. I don't know. That's like a longer story, though. This is flash fiction. It has to happen within 600 words. I don't see that happening. With that story, at least. Conflict, person versus nature, primary characters, mini third, past tense, fantasy, flash fiction. Fantasy. On a plane. I mean, if I was going to do like erotica fantasy, that would be not very interesting, to be honest. Fantasy adventure. That would be like Dungeons and Dragons type theme. Warriors, wizards. Fantasy. Or it could be fantasy in the purest sense of it's just crazy. And weird stuff happens on that plane. I may have written a story, but anytime I think of like plane travel, and because I grew up in the 80s, before there was like technology that could track a entity, or where you could still believe in mystical things in a fantasy setting and think they're real. One of those things was called the Bermuda Triangle, which, I mean, I'm sure that lore still exists, and I'm sure there's still people that, think that. I remember watching shows that believe maybe that's where like the aliens were focusing their abduction, or spirits, or just the fact that technology was poor and the ocean could be dangerous at times. A lot of people died there. There was a lot of fantasy around that like location. So every single time, almost, a lot of the times when I think of some sort of traveling, whether on a ship, whether on a plane, and it has to do with fantasy or horror, I kind of think of the Bermuda Triangle once in a while, and how that like story unto itself spread and still exists in my mind, and now, and of course, these words and the transcript that's being taken of me right now talking, to be committed in the same Git repository where you see these words being created now. And then that will live on if and when some sort of agency that we label as AI reads it and rolls it into their own model and spreads. Much like I'm doing now. I'm going to have this be fantasy magic. I want some magic in my life right now. So this fantasy is going to be just like, I think someone's going to be able to cast a spell. And the nature part, I don't quite understand yet. Maybe I will shortly. Maybe I will soon. But I don't understand how I would put magic on a plane versus nature. Maybe it'd be like they are crossing the Bermuda Triangle. But then, like, how do I gotta, like, this, I got it. I mean, I have an idea. I don't know if it is the idea. It could be a wizard. Because that's, more people may understand what a wizard is versus a cleric in this world. I'm thinking like, fantasy character classes, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or, well, everybody knows that one, so let's just stop there. Not like I know too many other ones either. Though I do have some box sets of those, but that's a whole other conversation and thought, a different channel to stream. I had to look over at those box sets and think of fantasy and magic. Let's go there. I can do that. That'll be fun. I need fun in my life. Everybody needs more fun in their life. And the type of fun that doesn't harm other people or spread lies, those are the best. That's the best type of fun. If you're sadistic and like to lie to people and hurt people and that gives you fun, well, I hope you're not having fun today. Writing about wizards will make things fun for me today. Magic. What the hell does that even mean? Because a magician right now is just a good liar. Because they're not really magical. In my mind, at least. Not the word magic and what magic means to me. Having role-played wizards, of course. So I do have some experience in casting a spell. And I have written fantasy novels, well, manuscripts rather, because they're not published yet, about wizards, and even gone into like deep detail of how to cast a spell or how they would pull from the magical weave and shape this creation, and how different wizard classes would do it, and some with shapes, some with text, some with feelings. So we have a wizard aboard a plane, and they're going through the Bermuda Triangle. And I like that's the let's go back to the outline, because now I gotta think of like everything. Who, what, why, when, where, how. Conflict. What's the plot? What's the resolution of that conflict? And its nature. So we can do like a tornado, flash tornado. And this is the past. So it's going to be like, I don't know how I'm going to put it in the 80s. We'll make it like an 80s thing. And we'll believe that the Bermuda Triangle and all the lore and mystique behind it is real. And that, I think, will work out for this story. Maybe. Maybe not. It could. I'm a bit lost at this point and trying to reason where this will go. It could go fun. I think it'll go fun. If it means little. If it doesn't work out, then that's okay. But I want to be on a plane right now. I want to be flying. And be a magician. And I'm not going to roll for gender. It's going to be me. I'm going to be one of those fiction writers today that their best character, well, I mean, everyone's best character is themselves or what they believe to be, because they know it better than anything else. And it's easy to lie to. So I'm going to add quirks, my own quirks, and not even try to abstract away from them and, use someone else's. And that's typically what I do when I write. The more you witness in life, the better you can make another character, because it'll be more distant from you. It won't be the same all the time. And I don't think it's been a while since I've actually used me and my characteristics and mannerisms for that matter, for a character description. The showing part, not the telling part. The habits, things like that. So for today, because fantasy, let's pull it in, and maybe it could be about me as a wizard during the 80s, flying through the Bermuda Triangle, and oh, it's fantasy, right? If it's fantasy and we're flying through the Bermuda Triangle, I'm the wizard that is going to defeat the thing that causes it. That's me. That's why the Bermuda Triangle is no longer. Not because of technology. And not because there's so much other data and information in our lives, too. That something like the Bermuda Triangle is boring these days. There's so much other lore in the world, and we're creating our own lives at such a rapid rate that something like the Bermuda Triangle seems like a meme that would go through the Western Wide Web and beyond for only a day. That's what the Bermuda Triangle is today, a meme. In the 80s, though, my God. Like, that was the thing you made a watch on the, well, then, 90s too, I suppose. A GPS, really, in the implementation worldwide. Satellites and all that stuff demystified the magic. But what really happened was this wizard was on a plane going and flying through the Bermuda Triangle to fight an elemental. Oh, that's it. I think they'll be like that. I thought of using and looking up some known sea creature, but this is a wizard, and you're either gonna. It makes it a little bit more out of scope, but still a trope in Fantasyland. And that trope in Fantasyland is you're either going to go fight the big bad, which is a common term if you've ever viewed any sort of, or talked with any people who role play, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Hero System. Playing Hero System now, it's just helping me get into be a wizard. I can think of the characters I had as a wizard. What characters did I have as a wizard? I had one called Lexin. Man, Lexin ended up being... Wow, we power gamed that one. I had that one for years, and we power gamed. I think it was 128th level ended up being. We went there. It was maybe reminiscent of the old Dungeons and Dragons Beck Me Immortal type. But that was the wizard I remember right now. The only one I ever played, actually. Maybe. And I solo game and write a story at the same time. Much like I do this. And I don't think I've had a main character in that was a wizard. So I played one wizard, I think, in my entire gaming history. So I have to use that, and so I'll use that. I'm going to use it's going to be Lexin. But this is a plane. This is on a plane. Excuse me. Set up game environment, read stochastic outline, write a story with story elements in 120 minutes or fewer. Score the story, 1 through 4. I'm trying to read stuff to distract myself. It's going to be, I'm sorry, my mind, I don't know. I lost on a tangent in my head right there. I was thinking about the money job. I got to get my mind out of the money job right now and get the one on the making the world for me a little bit more rich and creating a story. And that story is going to have a character called Lexan. And Lexan was the only wizard I've ever roleplayed. Yeah, I had one. I mean, I'm usually a psionicist. I like clerics. I really like the rogue class in Pathfinder. In fact, it's one of my favorite classes of all time. I've done a sorcerer one, or a, what the hell was it? A sorcerer? No. A different type, not a wizard class mage type. Anyway, I should focus on Lexan flying a plane to the Bermuda Triangle. And I got off on some weird tangent about tropes. And there's a trope where you either are going to go fight the big bad, or you're going to go stop some, and a very not as used trope, but certainly one that has been used before, is that story of, I've created a monster, now I must go stop the monster. And this is that story. The nature, too, will come into this. But it's going to be magical nature, but still connected to nature. I think it's going to be like a sudden, like, water elemental. And that would at least bring in a nature part of it. I'm already getting some fun things where, like, and this seems a little cruel, or they could throw things at this plane. Like, they can use the water pressure, throw it. So Lexan's got to go stop this. But I need to now create the whole entire backstory. And I usually like to try to do the opening paragraph to lay out everything that you're going to read in the next, like, max 10 paragraphs, depending on how you want to pace your words. And that's where I'm at with Lexan. Now the time. Want to go 80s? What was really famous? Lear jets? Ooh. Yeah. I think that was like, I didn't even know that was a brand name. It was just like that was in the, I think they're still pretty famous. Let me see. I'm going to do a search. I'm going to search for data. Lear jets. Yeah. I'm going to put them in a Learjet, and it's one word. Like, that was so, to me at least, when you had a few channels and a radio, I thought it was a type of jet and not a brand. And that's how you know, it was like a... Yeah, I'll just stop there before I sound too stupid. Like a commercial airplane for people, other people to use. You know, biplane, fighter jet, a Learjet is like almost as if it's an adjective or a descriptor of a general thing and not a corporation. Whoever did the advertising for that in the 80s too, because everyone, you know, that was like your exclusive. And so let's go there. They're going to be in a Learjet. Lexan flies. Now, is this his? Because there's also that, like, trope almost. And it would make sense. Like, if you could cast spells and you wanted to be rich, you could probably be rich in a world where spells aren't cast. And maybe in a world where spells are cast and you just have more spells than the other person. But that's sort of, and that idea of this rich wizard, at least in modern context, I think I've seen at least a few shows where they try to put magic in our modern day, and you usually have I guess this evil wizard that was using their spells for power to talk about what I was talking about. How if you wanted to be a wizard, you wanted to be rich, you had spells, non-spell world, you'd be rich. That was usually the bad guy, or that's who I would imagine is the bad guy. And then the poor wizard, the like one that was in tune with it, would be the good one, and would suffer internally if they were ever to get money from it. So Lexan is going to be in a Learjet that they own it or do they have stole it? My if this was my character Lexan, my only wizard I ever roleplayed in it was 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons. Forgotten Realms was the world we used at the time. I having had the great box set, and so did the DM. So I have this. I also NPC'd wizards. I suppose I've NPC'd wizards before, but not when you're DMing, you can get into your NPCs, but if they last like non-player characters, they last 10 minutes and they're out. So Lexan, let's go back to Lexan. Lexan never had a lot of money. I mean, had money, but didn't have it's like more of the traveler wizard. Like, I think he did have, but it was underground, enclosed. The only way you could get there is teleport, know the location. There was no external entry into his wizard area. Very meager, of course, had artifacts hidden there. The idea is that if you have something that's totally encased, the only way you can get in there is teleport. And you're high wizards, of course, teleporting and using diamond dust. And we didn't use cantrips, but we'll use them in this story. I got an hour and 32 minutes. I'm getting there. I got a name who's in a Learjet who doesn't own it. Is it borrowed? That would show that at least this person is lawful, has powerful friends, but has rich friends rather, because wealth doesn't bring power. And a lot of the times the power it does bring can be fleeting. God, and destructive too. Oof, just want more. So it's borrowed. Not Lexans. But can fly it, of course. Maybe, that would be it. If this was true fantasy in the present tense, Lexan's not flying this damn thing. At least not. They are in that a spell will be doing it for them. And this will be in a Learjet. Lexan flies. And I'm going to put someone else's name. Who would be... Because it'd be better than borrowed Learjet from somebody. Especially if you throw in a fantasy name. I'm going to think of a dwarf. Yes, I'm going to typecast, stereotype. I'm using, of course, 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's either is going to be an elf type name or a dwarf type name, dwarven. And in Dungeons and Dragons, it's 2nd edition. That's the more familiar dwarf, because that's the books I read from back to front, and new page numbers, column numbers. And so its description of a dwarf is stuck. And I've read many fiction books about fantasy dwarves, and this is fantasy. I'm going to go with magical fantasy and not sexual fantasy. Although the other would have been just as fun, likely. But probably inappropriate for the stream at this point in time. Maybe a private session, but that's not this game right now. This is Lexan Flies a Learjet. Brugers. We're going to make this very dwarven-like name. Brugers. Because they mine the mountain and love the gold and silver. Have the Constitution bonus. I think they got a +2 in Constitution because they were I mean, they grew up in the mines, so they had to be rigorous and healthy to survive, much less all the energy and work they were able to do. Lexan flies a Brugger's. Lexan flies a Brugger's Learjet. Brugger's Learjet, not, yeah. Into the Bermuda Triangle. I don't know how to spell Bermuda. Bermuda. Let's type this into the search and return engine. Just takes less energy. Like, I understand. I'm now having the head thought about, should I integrate ChatGPT to do my spell checking? No, I'll keep with the search and return engine because it's just as accurate and in less energy as well. So, did I actually type? I typed in the wrong word, or at least copied. Bermuda. Bermuda. Bermuda triangle. Flies Brugger's Learjet into the Bermuda Triangle at. I'm going to go with tornado right now. At a tornado. He cast. How long ago? Because this would be like, I'm going to say it, flying into the Bermuda Triangle back in the 80s. Was and dying and being lost within the area, or having had a path that even just went through it, was where you got abducted, or there were ghosts, or a time shift, or bad weather, or something crashed there and got lost, because I think it was like these were never found, as opposed to other shipwrecks that had been found. I think there was also that lore that was attached to the Bermuda Triangle. Why a lot of that happened is because Lexan cast. Why did Lexan cast it originally? So we'll get to that. So Lexan flies the Brugger's Learjet into the Bermuda Triangle at a tornado he cast a decade ago, back in the 70s. That way I can at least drop the time. A decade ago, like, if I said when Nixon was president, just to time set this. But then you're like, if you were to use that as a time modifier, you've automatically, like, I wrote politics into this. I don't really want to do that. I get that everywhere, every time I write. I need to get rid of it right now. This is about Lexan. I got much bigger things to worry about, like the tornado they created. Maybe that would be the relation into it. Or maybe I should. I mean, why resist it? Let's go with what's easy. I got an hour and 26 minutes, and let's make this a little bit entertaining. Maybe. A decade ago when Nixon was president. But I got to attach it to why you bring in politics into this. I'm going to leave this in parentheses. Make this parenthetical to maybe remove. Because if I had another time, like say why are they casting this? Why did they cast the tornado? What was the tornado? I mean, that's where I'm more than a bit lost at this point. Is that why did they cast this spell? I don't want it to be a monstrosity, meaning an external one, monstrous. Something also, well, it is a monstrosity. Like, they can create monstrosities. It's more of a, yeah, it's not the opposite which would be a creature coming in and invading the earth, and they're fighting for the freedom. No, I'm gonna I don't want to go like 80s, 90s maybe. So let's put when Reagan was president. Yeah, I think that's better. Maybe Lexon worked for the government. Maybe this could be like it's got to be the CIA. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. It'll almost be, it's still fantasy. It's back in the day. It's in a plane. Person versus nature. I guess, it's now a tornado. Like, yeah, Lexon's going to be the one that casts a spell. Maybe it's an elemental. I don't know. We'll get to that soon. Got an hour and 23 minutes left. I think I have at least a story that I could write quickly and maybe not be bad. Only because I'm pulling from like me as pure source material. I do have to fictionalize what it's like flying a plane. I've never flown a plane before. I've been in planes that have flown. I've observed people and what they do while they fly planes. But I've never flown a plane myself, so it's a bit of a lie because fiction's lying. And so that might not turn out right. But I got a magic person doing it. So Lexon doesn't fly. I'm going to say Lexon's familiar flies. What's their familiar, though? Like, I know what a familiar is. I got to describe that to people who don't know. Is that? Yeah, like, I know what that means. Yeah, but familiar, right? Oh, is it IAR? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I could have it be like a familiar spirit. Flies Brugger's Learjet into the Bermuda Triangle at a tornado. Lexon cast a decade ago when Reagan was president. He was working for the CIA. Yes. Absolutely. I could make this. I mean, and this is honestly, if you were to look at my daily journals and collection of personal data, the story right here in my mind right now is like, if as soon as it went into like CIA, maybe they're working to cover up their own mess or fault in background. I've been watching a lot of The Reacher, and I've known it's a character that was in a book. I've never read one of the stories, but I've seen that story and played by different characters, different actors rather, different storylines. But that like came to my mind when I thought of CIA, and now I'm thinking of some like storyline of why this person is working for these evil people. Evil people. They're working for aims that are very destructive for reasons that seem asinine. It happens a lot in society, especially with people. So in this case, they're not working for the evil person to have a greater goal. Good. Much like that character is. So I got to try to get that out of my mind. Say that out loud. Bring it to light. That is very thick into my schema of some governmental worker, and that now trope, which is a good thing. Why are they working for the CIA? Like, why would you tell anybody? If I was like a wizard, like, I'd tell a few people, you know, if I was legally bound with some oath and we had a mutual trust, I trusted them almost as I trust myself, or had some offspring, and trusted them, I'd be like, and know that, like, if I could cast spells, someone found out, and that'd be like, that changed things. That'd bring a lot of, like, light upon them and attention. So that would be the story. That's Lexan, though. Let's go source material. The actual Dungeons and Dragons Lexan. Yeah, this is the height of Forgotten Realms books, too. And up to a point, I had read them all, even the Dragonlance, Dark Sun, the original ones. There are way too many published these days for me to even go back to try to reading them. So those stories are in my mind when I'm thinking of what Lexan did and who Lexan was. Lexan was a half dark elf. Of course, this was around the time of Drizzt. And that, what was known as the Dark Elf trilogy, it was a great trilogy. I actually have a signed copy by the author of it, R.A. Salvatore. Great action sequences. There's some of those that are still in my mind when I write. So they had an impression upon me. But Lexan was good. Like really followed. No, it was like true neutral I tried to be. That's right. Indifferent. True neutral. I don't think that's really possible. I mean, yeah, true neutral's hard. So I probably was more neutral good. I leaned towards the good. Not always lawful. Not always evil. Yeah. Lexan flies. Lexan spirit flies. Brugger's Learjet in the Bermuda Triangle. So I think I've got it. I think I'm talking this character as going to just be me. I'm going to default to me. He actually had a tattoo like this too. Shocking. That's how close this character, I realize now. Lexan. He's my try to be good representation. I think he was a good person. He wasn't evil. It wasn't neutral. I had some sort of ethics. So why would they work for the CIA? Why would my Lexan work with the CIA? That's emerging. What would that be equivalent of in Forgotten Realms? And we never used the lore. We used the descriptions and the maps. It was the maps that, like, were the bigger influence. Because the Dungeon Master we played with, and it wasn't just the Forgotten Realms, we'd, like, use that as, like, the base geography, the above geography, but the Dungeon Master actually had a lot of the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons modules that he had used and just sort of placed someplace in that map. Because they had a lot of maps that were coming out then, and I have those today. And they're great maps. And in that region, so I never knew, I don't want to get off too far a tangent, but I got to bring this thought around. I never knew, like, the lore of Forgotten Realms that much, except for the fantasized novels. I guess I did there. And so I got some reference, because I read all the novels. And I read a lot of the modules, but I didn't own a lot. They were expensive. I'd pay for gas, insurance, stuff like this. This was around 1819. I started playing the Dungeons & Dragons read it, wanted to play it. Started playing it when I was around 17. A lot, but read about it since when I was 12. I had the blue box set. And then just got into the Forgotten Realms. And they had, I'm trying to think of like a security force. So Lexan in that fantasy world, even though I did not game using the like the background of their world, I read about it a lot in all the books. And I'm trying to think of some like I don't even know. It'd be like because the CIA would be like some devious Bane. What was the god? Bane? Yeah, no. I don't see why are they working for the CIA. Man, I got off on too much of a tangent. Now I just want to make this about Dungeons and Dragons. Not just flying a plane. Let's fly a dragon. Let's not talk about Reagan. I was thinking, is that how you spell his name? I don't care. Was president, and he was working for the fucking CIA, trying to find ways to stop nuclear. Would it spread? What would be the purpose? Stop nuclear missiles. Yeah, I don't know where that would go, but I'm also thinking the 80s still, 90s. There's always that like imminent threat, thermal global nuclear war. And there were times, there was movies, the bomb shelter. The Day After, I remember that movie. That freaked the hell out of me. I think it was called, it was The Day After. Damnation Alley. All these movies about post-nuclear war. And they just probably inspired people to continue to write about it in more extreme ways. But back then it was a threat. So being a wizard, Lexan would want to, being Lexan, they'd want to, probably try to stop nuclear war. I don't know how a tornado's going to do it, though. Oh, I know what the tornado would do. And they did it over water just because there wasn't any. It was hard. It was the Bermuda Triangle. That's why. The CIA test site, the global playground of experiments. I got to cut this sentence short. Okay, that sentence does stop right there. Working for the CIA. Let's do a hard stop right there on that. I don't want to make the first sentence the entire plot, motivation, everything. I got an hour and 11 minutes left. I'm getting somewhere. Believe me, I am. I think I know now where the tornadoes will be. They tested in the Bermuda Triangle, but they had plans. Lexan at least did. Lexan went to the CIA. Lexan shown the CIA they could cast. They could conjure tornado over a missile site. Over a nuclear missile site. A small funnel. in their secret testing site called the Bermuda Triangle. Let's go 80s, 90s. It's crazy how the extremes of yeah. I don't know where I was going to go with that. Just have to be do with trying at least to understand. What would it be like in the 80s compared to now? Where the fright was still alive. But I guess in ways you could turn it off. And that's the difference. There was a disconnect. There was your own reality, your own truth. Well, let me take that back. There was a collective truth because there wasn't that much information out. But it also just wasn't a constant communication of someone else's reality. You really had to deal with other people face to face. And you get a better understanding of them than you do now. There's less conversation. We're constantly bombarded by information that's so beyond our bodies that it's overwhelming. So that's going to be the tornado in this story. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that either. I know where I understood at least where I was going with it, but I don't think I completed that thought. I think that is to say that we were able to disconnect back then. So you could always just go outside and talk with your friends and sometimes just sit and throw a rock. God, long time. And not be bombarded by constant information and changing of narratives and lies. Not that truth is a reality ever. That's the Bermuda Triangle to me. The CIA. 80s. Nuclear war. And Lexing's flying in the plane. What's Lexington gonna do? Showing the why would you need the CIA? You're a magician. Like what would be even the reason if you want to stop nuclear war and you were a wizard, and I got an hour and 6 minutes, which I can figure out this plot hole. Like why do I need Reagan and the CIA other than placement and using like very defined things in my mind, and I think throughout the collective history that will exist, that would be able to place this at a time and a place to make it in the past. Is it worth it? Can they do it a different way? Saying the Bermuda Triangle is enough. Working for the CIA. Why would they work with them? Because he doesn't have the magic enough to find all the nuclear missiles. That's what I gotta state. Election shown the CIA could conjure a tornado over a nuclear missile site. I don't know. This is feeling a little dumb. I might rate this lower than I thought during the beginning, but it's feeling like it's going someplace. But I'm going to see where it goes. Explained by over a nuclear missile site. I'm going to say Lexan cast a spell. They're going to have to make up a device. Told us Lexan cast a spell. On a, we want to go, I'm trying to like show enough to also be able to tell more of just story. I got plot holes I can fill in. I got an hour and 3 minutes of a flash fiction story. I can do this. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll fail and it'll suck, but hey. You can always edit. So Lexan cast a spell. From an aircraft carrier. Familiar's magical, Lexan's familiar spirit flies Brugger's Lear jet into the Bermuda Triangle at a tornado Lexan cast a decade ago when Reagan was president. He was working for the CIA. Lexan cast a spell from an aircraft carrier when working with the CIA. So let's put that time. When working with the CIA, Lexan cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure or tornado their secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. After casting the spell, what happened after casting the spell? Lexan raised a big cardboard box. I say cardboard box and let imagination go. This is supposed to happen in the present. So I need to make sure raised a cardboard box and said, and lied. So I now see there's it's a lie yet again. In order to be able to say I don't cast spells rather than, and then potentially have the CIA like want to kidnap him and dissect him and trap him. In this case, for this character, for this story, it'll be a lie that a box is doing it. Why wouldn't you? I mean, they try to steal it, maybe. We'll see. It's a flash fiction story. Let's just hand wave that past and let the story go on through. And I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box. Nucleus. Yes. This box, hundreds at a time. Over nuclear missile sites. Okay. That's pretty dense. It's pretty, I don't know if it's pretty. Could be a little bit ugly right now, but that's fine. We'll continue to write. I got 57 minutes left and 38 seconds. When working with the CIA, Alexan cast a spell from an aircraft to conjure a skyscraper, tall tornado. Inside their secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. After casting the spell, Alexan raised a cardboard box and lied. This box creates these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box, hundreds at a time over nuclear missile sites, in the ocean or on land. If only I know that lat long of the sites. If only I know. Latitude, I just literally wrote some code right now that used latitude and longitude. I'm doing a search and return engine to figure out how to spell that right. Latitude. Okay, that was close. My sloppy typing. And longitude. Okay. Let's write the whole words, not lat long, because obviously I did that in my code because it's much easier to type that out. People know if you're doing geomapping that that's what you're doing. Like magic. Yeah, this is where you start to try to blend the two things. The real world, I think I rambled on some tangent and probably got lost in it a little while ago about how if one were wizards in this day and age, they'd be all powerful. What would that look like? And I think a lot of representations make them to be evil. So I don't want to make Lexan evil. Even in the past time in the 80s, that was sort of a trope too. Wants to stop nuclear war, but there has to be an alternative motive. If this can deal with the CIA, Lexan's not stupid. I'm suddenly having this flash, now the thing of like wizards, and the more I think about magic and putting magic in a time, I never read the book, because there's only so much time. And there's some good movies based upon books there, and there's this movie about, there were like two wizards. I think it was some historical England, British wizards. I think that's where it was placed. It was pretty good. I'm sure the book, I think I remember seeing it on bookshelves in the mall or Barnes and Noble bookstores. It's two names of the main character with an ampersand in the middle. Something Morales, I can't even remember. It was good. That's coming to mind. That pulled from my deep memories. And now I'm thinking of that, how that story was sort of similar in some of the aspects. If I remember right, like both, they had the writer of the story had two wizards, and one wizard, if I remember during the storyline, went and they both worked for like the opposite, the French and the British. I think there was, I can't remember what, because humans have fought a lot of wars, and this is a vague memory of mine. I'm just trying to pull out to make sure I'm not, or maybe realizing what I was inspired by and could make this better. Because they did some good things in that. At least the story that I saw, I thought it was really good. But the time then, when they were introducing magic, was still the communication. Like, how can I make this so it could have happened? But because of the lack of records, nobody knows. And that's where the Bermuda Triangle in the 90s comes from. Maybe I was a little bit inspired by that past story that was a book, then got turned into a miniseries, and I've only seen the miniseries. It was well played. Whoever did the translation from the book, even though I didn't read it, had done a good job because it kept me interested. As actors, directors, and all the producers and the set people and the graphics and all that was just really cool too. So in this case, they're working for the CIA in about the 80s, 90s, flying a plane, only if I know the longitude and latitude of the sites. As Lexon spoke, if only I know the latitude and longitude of the sites. As Lexon spoke. He watched the tornado spin. What's going to happen? Why was it 10 years ago that the tornado returned? And another spawn. I don't know. So that's, I got to think. But before I do, I'm going to write how it ends. Maybe. I don't know how it ends. I have ideas. Flies the plane in a tornado and the tornado stops. Why? It's supposed to be present tense. It is. It's happening present, but you got to give a little bit of backstory. So let's stay in the past for just a little bit longer. I'll failed in this because it'll be more in the past than it is the present. But it's presence. You know, you got to give a little bit of backstory. And today I just don't have it within me to. I guess if I started with Lexon cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a skyscraper tall tornado inside the CIA secret testing site called the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe, I mean, you would have wanted to do it before and have a sure-proof ray, but you wouldn't back then necessarily have the magic to find all the missile sites yourself. That's a lot. And it's like, I'm going to make this like a tall tale fantasy. It's fantasy. There's no way this could happen. Way too much. We got 50 minutes left. Podge, man. This is becoming stupid. Or more than just a flash fiction story. When working with the CIA, Lexon cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to show the CIA this is that box. This box can create these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box. Hundreds at a time over nuclear missile sites. In land or on land, in the ocean or on land. If only I know the longitude and latitude of sites. As Lexon spoke, he watched the tornado spin. Huh. I don't know where I'm going. I mean, yeah. Like, what's going to happen? Why is it 10 years now? And I got to think of the time. Do I need the Learjet? If I am now, I think I might need it. I can drop that. And I can make this present tense. So, if I started this story like this, Lexon cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a skyscraper-tall tornado inside the CIA secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. As he cast the spell, I'll just say and lies. This box can create these tornadoes. So let's get rid of this. Like, I like the idea. But now, one, I don't want to write all this in past tense because that's not the story parameters I've been given. Present tense. And I don't want to cheat by like writing the first and last lines present tense and everything else past tense and say like, oh, look what I did. If it was past tense, I would probably let myself do that because, you know, the predominant story is told in the past, but maybe I'll remember that for future and use this talking right now as justification for doing that. But for right now is what I really got to concern myself is making this mostly present tense, and this is the way that I could do it. I think it'd be less. I honestly, now that I'm pulling away from my idea of Lexon, my Dungeons and Dragons character, more into what I now remember, and I still don't know the name. I gotta find the name. I should find the name at least. And see if they can figure this out for me. I just don't remember the name of that. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's so many different like magician types out there these days, both for the kids and for the adults. Anyway, I'm gonna move on from that. I can't now. Yeah, I'm trying, but I'm going to have to let that go because I could take the next 15 minutes trying to find the name of this book because it's inspired me. I just want to try to give a shout out for it, and that's why I took the time for the search and return engine away from the story to be able to at least, yeah, give it a shout out for it. It's now altered the way I was thinking of the story. This would fit more of that narrative. This is more Dungeons and Dragons, this first sentence, because it's got a familiar spirit flying a plane. And sort of smashes my fantasy adventure with these sort of abilities to conjure things that are supernatural and can Yeah, let's just get rid of that. I like that sentence, don't get me wrong. But let's just begin and start it right here. It's flash fiction. And I'd have to write a whole bunch more to be able to tell a good backstory for the Learjet. I have to like write why they're in a Learjet, and 10 years ago they're writing for the CIA, working for the CIA. And then how they fell out of pace. That'd be a novel. I need a flash fiction story. And this is the best way in any present tense. I was getting too past tense, and that's not part of the parameters. Story elements. Lexington cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a skyscraper tall tornado inside the CIA's secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. Lexington raises a cardboard box and lies. This box can create these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box. Hundreds at a time over nuclear missile sites, in the ocean or on land. If only I know the latitude and longitude of the sites. As Lexington spoke. Let's put some people in this. I got 43 minutes. Now I'm getting a little bit tense. But I think I got at least something I can tell a story on real quick. The generals and CIA agents, NSA agents, the generals and NSA. Watch as a pencil, let's say telephone pole. Be like this altruistic scientist. I don't know if that's altruistic's the right word. Probably not, but it feels right. But the definition of words typically is not a feeling. Unless, of course, you're a poet, which I am not right now. These generals and NSA agents watch as a telephone pole sized water funnel, air funnel, spins and expands to the size of to the width of a skyscraper. So let's have it grow. So I'm going to go back and correct the beginning and make it a pole, a telephone pole sized. Lexington raises a cardboard box and lies. This box can create these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box. Hundreds at a time over nuclear missile sites, in the ocean or on land. If only I know the latitude and longitude of the sites. The generals and NSA agents watch as a telephone pole-sized air funnel spins and expands to the width of a skyscraper. Oh, right. So how micro do I want to, like, just this instant of time? Like how, what's, scraper, scrape. I can't, skyscraper? Like I can't, that looks like totally wrong to me. Oh, it's one word, that's why. Thank you, search and return engine. Low energy at least. Still energy. Expanded for my inability to know that I need to connect sky and scrape for skyscrape per. Expands the width of a skyscraper. This is going to inspire some. I was thinking of like how to put a big phone brick, but I kind of got to shut up and write. The generals and NSA agents watch as the telephone pole-sized funnel, air funnel, spin and expands. Width of a skyscraper. Air Force General collapse. Impressive. Let's do this. U.S. Air Force General. U.S. Air Force. Just putting words together to make a word. Let's do this. I like my. Lexon cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a telephone pole-sized tornado inside the CIA's secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. Let's skip over that. That's not horrible, and I understand the concept. I think it's going to be the turning of the off. Lexon magic. I gotta talk about the spell. Like, I should dive into that for a paragraph real quick. So magic. How am I going to pull this? Pull this out of the weave now. I'll think about it in 2 minutes. Something more interesting, because the magical weave is, I've used it. I've used magical shapes, magical etchings, magical angles. This is America. This is the 80s and 90s. What's a good trope for then? Or just any sort of interesting way that an earthling would be able to actually cast a spell. Because it'd be easy to sort of fictionalize, and has been, if they're like a cleric, if I were thinking Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. But magic. How are you going to cast it? It can't come, well, energy, Lexon's soul pulls, I don't know, energy from how would I cast a spell? I mean, like, how would I got that's, if I had to, like, I need to describe, that's kind of critical. I realize my time. This is Lexon's soul pulls energy from, like, I can't think. Yeah. I'm just not there. It's got to be like, okay. Let's do it not soul. I don't want to connect it to a soul. Being. Lexon's atoms. Lexon's Nexus. I'm just not even going to try to have it. Tunes with the tunes. Quantum forces. Connecting his mental will and thought through space and time to manifest creations from the elements near and far. Lexon casts Lexon's spell casts his mental, his will and thought called a Nexus that tunes quantum forces connecting space and time to manifest creations from far and near. Yes. That's actually a better sentence and keeps more in line with the pattern I started with as far as the narrator is concerned. Lexon's spell casts from his will and thought called the Nexus that tunes quantum forces connecting space and time to manifest creations from elements far and near. The spell wind element is the spell Lexon learned I don't know any. I like usually if I'm going to connect this to some historical fiction, of not historical fiction, make this like a historical fiction book and try to connect this with what we believe to be history, and likely is. I mean, I think enough people believe it, and there's enough records that it remain that you can at least give some credence that, you know, it could be true. Very high probability of it. Just because you don't have a TikTok of it. The spell, when in fact, you know, those things could be made nowadays anyway by AI, or rather, let's use the proper term, power, energy, and a large language model computing system. It has no agency. So let's not call it something that we give agency to. The spell wind element is a spell Lexon learned from scrolls and patterns because you got to learn. If you're going to be a wizard, I think the idea is if you're a wizard, you have a spell book. If you're like honestly, I mean, I had a character that was a sorcerer, I think it is, a class. It comes more from your within, which is usually you have, like, you draw from some it'd be learned too, but there's a subclass, I would say, of wizards is witches. As opposed to like a bard, if they have magic, it's usually through their performance. It makes sense. So this would just be a normal, where did he learn it? Learn from archives, learn from I'm just gonna leave it at that because I don't want to put religion. I want to put thought into this. Monks, it's kind of a trope, but I think if I use that word, many people will find that at least they'll have an understanding of what it would have been in the 80s and 90s. One, but someone who have focused more on their thought than their body. And that's sort of what I want. I don't want it to be a cleric, or I don't want it to be a priest. I don't want to connect it with religion because then it's going to be too much like a spell, a cleric. If I were going to go fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, and I guess hero system if you really wanted to go there. GURPS, you could be clerics and GURPS. You could be anything in GURPS, much like hero system. The spell, so in this case, I'm going to go the Lost Monks of Thought. More of the mind. I just want to go with the one spell. I don't want to get too much in the backstory. This has to be 27 minutes. Lost Monk of Thought. He holds the scroll, hides. He thinks let's just go with that. I'm going to just say that's how it goes. How did he get there? I don't know. We'll figure that out in another story. This is this story. Enough thought. I gotta have a transition sentence. A spell. He's cast. He casts. As a magic trick. Until a spell he lies, he sells to help farmers and people move earth or conjure water from the air. Okay, so this is like near the, I think this is going to be near the end right here. Lexing's Nexus. Hum deep at the praise and the wild thoughts of destruction shaping in his mind as he hears the agents and officers talk about leveling cities and bridges and raining floods from the sky on our enemies. I got this. This is maybe a little bit more interesting, maybe. What do I got? 23 minutes, okay. The generals and the NSA agents watch as a telephone pole-sized funnel spins. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's hot spells from the air and farmers on Earth. Lexon's Nexus. Where do I have that? Lexus Nexus. Pulls power. Pulls quantum power from people. Helping control and shape the magic. He lies and says, that comes from this box. "22 minutes. Roughly. The generals that comes from this box. Kidnapped. Lexon. And took the box. And found a mess of wires. And printed circuit boards. Illuminated by flashing lights. Held the box and dismantled the box. They say to, uh-oh. I gotta do, man, that's weird. I went past tense. Kidnaps. It's unlike me. Kidnaps Lexon and takes the box. And opens. And they open a mess of wires. They dismantle the box. And use weeks' time. Did I go past tense again? I did. Damn it. Ah. I need to move this right here and just put it. That's all I need to do. Let's move this paragraph. Yet again, I'm going to, so I don't have to go past tense. This is one of those stories I wish I could have went past tense. The generals in the NSA agent watch. Okay, that's better. That's, I suppose, at least present tense. In the present. I got 17 minutes left. I don't know how much more I have. Lexon cast a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a telephone pole-sized tornado inside the CIA's secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. Lexon raises a cardboard box and lies. This box can create these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box, hundreds at a time over the nuclear missile sites. In the ocean or on land, if only I know the longitude and longitude of the sites. The generals and the NSA agents watch as a telephone pole-sized air funnel spins and expands to the width of a skyscraper. The U.S. Air Force agent claps. Impressive. We'll get those commies yet, nods the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Lexon's Nexus hums deep at the praise. I'm just going to throw quantum around here. Quantum praise, yeah. The quantum praise and the wild thought of destruction shaping in his mind. As he hears the agents, NSA agents, and military officers talk about leveling cities and bridges and raining flood from the sky on our enemies. Raining floods. Lexon's Nexus trembles and quakes. Rippling and tearing. Quantum chaos. Through space and time. All around. The aircraft carrier. I don't have to have another story after this. Water exploded. Water thrust. From below. Rising. Lifting. Pushing. And rose from water. rose around the water. What the? Water thrust from below and rose around. Water thrust from below and rose around the aircraft carrier. Covering the sun. Water flooded the decks, ripping the generals, agents, and the airplanes, along with the box, into the ocean. The hull broke. Sunk. Does everyone die, including Lexan? Lexan swims. From tornadoes spawning. Lexan swims from tornadoes spawning and falling around the CIA test site. He follows. He swims to land. All right. I think that encompasses a lot of the jargon and narrative that I had spoke out for the previous, hour and over 50 minutes. So it's hour and 50 minutes, almost an hour and 51 minutes. I am going to turn this off so a loud buzzer does not go in my ear if I happen to have to read this more than once. I may not. Let's find out. I think that's it. I think that's the story. It's flash fiction-y. It's maybe, if you wanted to subcategorize that too, you could, but it's flash fiction in my mind. Maybe. We'll see. Let's go ahead and read these flash fiction, stochastic fiction game, story elements, and then read the story to see if I at least got there somehow. I don't know if this is person versus nature, but it sort of is. Story elements for today's stochastic fiction game are setting time past, setting main location plane, conflict person versus nature, quantity of primary characters mini, point of view third, tense present tense. Genre, fantasy. Format, flash fiction. I need to name this story. I think we'll see. Nexus. For today's stochastic fiction game story, titled Nexus. Nexus. Lexon's spell cast from his will and thought called a nexus that tunes quantum forces connecting space and time to manifest creations from the elements near and far. The spell Wind Element is a spell Lexon learned from scrolls taken from the lost monks of thought. A spell he sells to help farmers and people move earth or conjure water from the air. Lexon's nexus pulls quantum power from people, helping control and shape the magic, and he lies and says that comes from this box. The CIA kidnaps Lexon and takes the box, and they open a mess of wires and printed circuit boards, illuminating by flashing lights. They dismantle the box and inspect it for weeks at times, finding nothing new or that should work. The team lead Marcus says to Lexon, "Fix the box and show us how to work it." "Only I can use it," says Lexon. "So if we kill you," says the NSA agent, "there is no longer a threat." Lexon nods and says yes. Lexon casts a spell from an aircraft carrier to conjure a telephone pole-sized tornado inside the CIA's secret ocean testing range called the Bermuda Triangle. Lexon raises the box, and lies. "This box can create these tornadoes, and I can control these tornadoes, and only I can control these tornadoes from the sky with this box. Hundreds at a time over nuclear missile sites, in the ocean or on land, if only I know the latitude and longitude of the sites." The generals and NSA agents watch as a telephone pole-sized air funnel spins and expands to the width of a skyscraper. The U.S. Air Force general claps, "Impressive." "We'll get those commies," nods the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Lexon's nexus hums deep at the quantum praise and the wild thought of destruction shaping in the minds of the generals and agents as he hears the NSA agents and military officers talk about leveling cities and bridges and raining floods from the sky on our enemies. Lexon's nexus trembles and quakes, ripple quantum chaos through space-time. All around the aircraft carrier, water thrusts from below and rises around the aircraft carrier in the sky, covering the sun. Water floods on the decks, ripping the generals, agents, and airplanes along the deck and with the box into the ocean. The aircraft carrier hull breaks and the aircraft carrier sinks. Lexon swims from tornadoes spawning and falling around the CIA test site. He swims to Bermuda and hides in a house on the beach, listening to the lore of the Bermuda Triangle spread through the world as a warning to never let people know he casts spells. That was the story for the stochastic fiction game for today. As the transcript will be saved after as well, within this source control repository called Word Prostitute. It is a uses Git. Now let's go ahead and commit a little message and rate this. Of a 1 of 4. You know, maybe I'm feeling good about myself lately. Maybe I'm feeling a little more confident in my ability to write flash fiction. I'm going to give it a 3. A little rewriting. Quick to know those mistakes. Is it person versus nature? I don't know. I don't think so. Kind of. The quantum nature, maybe. And with that, That was the Stochastic fiction game for today. Remember, we're all inspired by other people's stories. And maybe one day we can create something to either inspire a story or is the story itself through some means of expression. And be careful who you inspire, but don't let it stop you.